If it's not within your circle as adjudicators, then it is either between you and the minor or between you and then the event organizer. So that as well is a form of abuse, sexual abuse. And this is unwanted sexual contact or pressure. The other type of abuse that we normally disregard is neglect. For example, failing to provide the basic needs well, you've signed your TORs and they have stipulated what they're supposed to do, but then your basic need that you may need to carry out a given task or to ensure that you stay in that environment is well, uh, you're not receiving it. Well, at that point, um, you as well suffering from abuse. And also, at you as an adjudicator or the event organizers can then neglect a minor that is under our care because, well, you say, this is a minor. Even when they're showing you signs that they are being abused or they are suffering from a situation, a mental or emotional situation, you will neglect them, yet they need you at that moment. We'll even talk about to what extent do they need you and to what extent do you engage. Uh, so at that point, they need us because in that environment, you're the adult or you're the uh, authority that is there above them. And when we notice that, well, you don't neglect uh, anyone that is within your care. The other one is that emotional abuse, for example, humiliation, belittling, name calling, threats. Now, this is very much in within the space. For example, you'll find adjudicators having banter and they're calling out each other and they're telling, say, yo, your speech was very bad. Or did you hear this person's speech? And then unfortunately, this child or the speaker is hearing what you're saying, in as much as their speech has been very bad, like you're in a bin room and you've literally dozed off during the speech. It is very saddening if the speaker then hears you, make him or her a meme and an example as you're having your banter. Also, even within adjudicators yourselves, most times you find you're talking so much badly about each other, and then at the end of the day, you find someone is emotionally abused at the end of the day. Name calling. If someone has not told you to call them uh, chief, like Harold boldly says he's called a chief, please don't call them another name that they don't want. If this one has not told you to call him by his very difficult first name, please don't do it because one, you may butcher the name and he will be emotionally abused, or you can even start giving them really names because something has happened in a room during a speech. A speaker has probably uh, murdered English or has given a very bad example, and then you start giving that person a name. It is traumatizing, and well, this child or the speaker deserves the right to be treated well and to be dealt to not undergo this trauma. The other one is exploitation. For example, using a speaker or a contestant for personal gain, where you know that, well, this child is looking up to you. You're now the one that they are. They're looking up to you for mentorship because you're the adjudicator. They want feedback, how to improve. Then use that innocence. You take advantage of that they have given you, and then later on you find that it is devastating. It is also a very bad practice at the end of the day. Then basically up to that point, can I see if we are still together? Harold, are we still together? Okay. Well, I think that's confirmation enough. We can continue. Then also some of it's also important that, well, you've now understood the different types of abuse that exists with their examples, but are you then able to identify when abuse is happening to a child? Are you able to identify when abuse is happening to you as an adjudicator? Are you able to identify if a fellow adjudicator is being abused? And in most cases, you find that people are uncomfortable talking about this because the response that we normally give to people that are being abused in Uganda is very crazy. One, you start giving them blames instead of listening to them and giving them that support, the emotional and mental support that they need. And at the end of the day, people don't really want to come out and clearly say that so and so has abused me. But in the long run, you'll get to know about it because, well, human as a human being, you get filled up with all this that has been happening in your life, and at one point in time you'll burst. If you're not bursting and we're not seeing it physically, or we're not seeing it in your, as a something that is manifesting, we will find that you as an individual or this person is now suffering from things like depression and their like. So it's important for us to understand the different types of the different signs of abuse that exist. And understanding the signs of abuse then help you to help this person, because sometimes they may not come out and tell you that I need help, please help me, please help me. You just need to identify, give them the a listening ear, and then they will be able to tell you that this and this is happening. But also it is important that we do it out of good practice. We will look at what good practice then is later on. So some other signs of abuse is that you find that people are having physical injuries. Someone cannot explain the bruises that they have. You've just met them yesterday, they didn't have this. And in the morning, you're seeing someone with bruises, and they are unable to explain these things. Or cuts, you know, uh, something that has happened. Just an example, when we were in primary, I remember an example where some boys were being abused by fellow like prefects. They were cut with razor blades and also beaten with thorns. So in the morning you wake up and you're seeing someone has they went, you were in preps together. They in the morning they're waking up, their eyes are swollen, they have dark spots under their eyes, and the skin is all peeled off. Sometimes they're cut. You wake up when part of your hair is, hair on your head is has been chopped off in very weird manner. So you find that these people the following day, most of them actually dropped out, and they we were in the same class. Some of them dropped out of school, and some of them, those who were strong enough, they then had to come back the following year, like what at campus I think they call a dead year. So some of these things actually have devastating effects or impacts on the lives of the people that are victims, or they have been victimized, and yet we may not know. Then also, another sign of abuse is changes in sleep or eating patterns. You find that someone has been abused, and they cannot tell you, they are battling with the thing in their mind. It then makes them to lose sleep, or even their appetite is lost at the end of the day. There is also mood swings or depression. Someone is in 1 minute happy, the next minute they are looking like they've seen a ghost. So it's really hurting. Then the other bit is self-harm or suicidal thoughts. Um, this is where you'll find someone is now harming themselves, cutting themselves, because, well, they have been bullied, they have been abused. It can be mentally, physically, really, especially the young children. You find that someone will then start cutting themselves. You ask them what happened, They cannot, they'll tell you, today I failed. The next time they'll cut themselves, then you ask them, they'll still tell you the same explanation or another one. But then you find that they're battling with things. Some even end up committing suicide at the end of the day, or having suicidal thoughts. Then also another sign of abuse is having a fearfulness or suffering from anxiety. There is also difficulty concentrating in events, because you're always like, it's like everything is getting you out of your skin. Then there is also the aspect of withdrawn behavior. A child who has been very social, after suffering from abuse, or when they're undergoing depression or trauma from the abuse, you find that they have started withdrawing from the rest. They are now battling with things like depression. They don't want to be seen socially, because, well, when you're with people, that's when then people get to start uh, noticing the signs or the changes that are there. Please confirm that we're still together. It's only Harold that is here. Okay. Are we also learning, or we are? Okay. Thank you so much. So we can continue. Then also, after understanding what abuse is, it's also important for us to tackle the issue of vulnerability. How then do we identify people that are vulnerable? So vulnerability covers the concepts of those factors that probably will increase a person's risk of being abused or neglected. You as a person, those factors that you think will then increase your risk of being abused or neglected. So some of the factors that make one vulnerable include age, uh, particularly people who are young, uh, and they are in our care, or the minors that are under our care. You find that they are they have a high risk of being abused, and that makes them, their age being young itself makes them vulnerable to abuse. So it is then very important for us to understand and know how to handle and take care of the people that are minors in our spaces. Also, those that have a lack of experience, they are vulnerable to abuse. For even, this is actually very, very, how can I say it? It's very evident, especially in our circuit and as adjudicators. You find that you're probably a novice judge, and you do not have the experience that others have. And if you find very mean, pro, and established, in quotes, established adjudicators, probably like, oh my goodness. I think I have lost my screen. Just a second. Are you able to see my screen?
No, not yet, Gracious. Maybe you want to try again, just a little bit.
Okay, let me do it. Okay, I believe you're able to see it now. Can I get confirmation?
Yeah, vulnerability. We're able to see it. You can proceed.
Okay, someone is saying that the session is already putting people in dopamine release state. Okay. So I was talking about the lack of experience. You find that as a novice judge, I find established, or people who have been in the field for a long time, like my good friend Wangusa Ashim, and he's a very kind adjudicator, by the way. So if you find someone who is not like him, they will be able to abuse you or neglect you. They'll not show you, even if you're a trainee adjudicator, you will feel neglected because, well, the seniors or the pros or those that call themselves established in the field will not give you that space all the time, or the listening ear, uh, to learn, and as well tell you that, look, Gracious, here you, maybe you could do it this way. Instead of giving feedback the way you did, maybe we could do it this way. You see, that is a very good, like a constructive feedback, and it is helpful in one ensuring that as Gracious I learn. But then when you find someone who is very mean and is a friend to the devil, they will they will be very abusive. They will not give you the opportunity to learn, and at the end of the day, you will feel neglected in one way or the other. So I hope we can then. I don't know whether you've ever experienced that, where because you lack experience, you find that one, you're either neglected, or people are making fun of the fact that you're neglected, and you're now being called names. You're not given the opportunity to learn. And then the other thing is that dependence on coaches or teachers. This is very crucial, and it's one of the things that make the young ones in our circuit very vulnerable to abuse, because one, they are depending on coaches or teachers, and in most cases, these coaches or teachers that then abuse these young ones are the same ones that they, one, do not understand what their role as far as safeguarding is concerned. They do not know that. Then secondly, they also have questionable, can I say, questionable characters that then would then predispose the children that are depending on them to abuse. So it is very key that as adjudicators, as coaches, as teachers, we draw a line, and then are very good mentors to these young ones. We as well are able to give them opportunity to learn and not just take advantage on them. Also, other things that make us vulnerable, or the children that we are judging vulnerable, is that performance anxiety. And also, lastly, the desire to please adults. I normally tell the people that I teach that, one, I am really not so concerned about how well you're pleasing me or you're making me happy, if at the end of the day, you as an individual, you're not happy with the decision that you've made. We need to be in a space where you can ably discuss. If I've told you that, probably, Harold, please do this, and then you're not comfortable doing that, we should be able to speak, have a discussion between ourselves, and then you can ask me, why are you saying I do this? I'm not comfortable, or I don't understand, and then I'll be able to make you understand. But also, in most cases, don't try and give the child that chance if you're not going to be able to calm them down. Otherwise, you are going to have the worst kind of day, because children will then take advantage of that. But then, if you know how to balance between the two, but and as well create a kind of environment that is favorable for you as a coach, you as a judge, and then also for the child or even the event organizer, that would be a very good thing. So, up to that point, are we together? Okay. Well, I think we will then continue. Now, we then come to my very good friend, safeguarding. Something that most of us neglect, something that most of us misunderstand. And I hope at the end of it all, we are going to be able to share our experiences. We are going to be able to be very good adjudicators, and be very good at safeguarding. Just give me a second.
Okay, so a very good evening, everyone. As we wait for the facilitator to get back onto the call, happy she has had a problem of restarting. I just want to just get us back on point on what she is trying to do right now. So right now is that what is happening right now is that we are going through the safeguarding policies of Debate Institute Africa. There's a lot of things that happen within the space, the debate space, the public speak space. And in this particular space, you deal with a lot of people. You deal with fellow adjudicators. You also deal with young children and minors that are mostly below the age of 18. If you are cognizant enough, you might have noticed that during the Central Region Paragonitorica has different classes of people who sign up. They are the beginners, then the intermediate, and then the advanced speakers. So within beginners or starters are the Form 1s and Form 2s. Then intermediate is Form 3 and Form 4, and then advanced is Form 5 and Form 6. So every single school that shows up for a particular training, a particular tournament, they show up in those different categories. So most of the times, as you are working in this public speech space, you're going to be working with minors, and you want to be sure of how you act around these particular minors. And a lot of abuse happens within the circuit, not just between judges and students, but also between fellow students. And as a judge, you stand in an echelon of a role model, and these particular students look up to you. A lot happens, including theft, including sexual tensions between students themselves, and you need to be able to learn how to safeguard yourselves, because these particular things, for those that are doing law, have legal implications to them, especially to do with assault and assaulting over of a minor. Now, you might not take this seriously, and you might say, I'm just doing banter, but you will end up being like Manchester United, which was told they're not going to win the league but never took those things seriously. So what I'm trying to say is that at a point in time, yes, Joseph, over to you. Okay, surely. Yeah, so what I was saying is that you really want to be careful with how you act around the young students, with how you interact with them. You want to keep yourself unprofessional and safeguarded from particular abuse, because there are always legal implications in terms of assault and sexual molestation that can be charged against you as an individual, and that is quite very unbecoming of you if you are to be an adjudicator and a professional. So over to you, Joseph. Okay, Gracious, over to you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you so much, Harold. And I apologize for that glitch. It seems I was born in the era where computer was just being thought of, and I did something that had to make my PC be restarted. So I was later on, earlier on, I was saying that it is important for us to understand what safeguarding is. It's also important for us to identify um, and differentiate safeguarding from what child protection then is. And also, it's important that we do not disregard or underlook the aspect of safeguarding. Earlier on at the start of the module, the session, I was telling you that I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he asked me whether we have abuse happening within the circuit, and I was like, yes. It was like I need the magnitude, and I was like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's at a 7 out of 10 range, and that could even be less, bearing in mind that I don't have superpowers to check. But if we're looking at the statistics very well, roughly we have 7 out of 8 cases of abuse happening. And it's not because, the people that are engaging in this kind of abuse or uh, having issues within the circuit are people that are only children. Well, no, there are also people that are adjudicators like us. It's between people that are probably the event organizers, and also it is between the students themselves. But one key thing that I was telling my friend was that it's most times we forget our roles when we are in such spaces, and we just take for granted the space that we have been given to do all sorts of things that we want to do. If you're a Bible scholar, I'll then give this example. Sometimes in the circuit, you might think we have gone back to the era of Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. And most times, the last time I was in an event, I think that was last year, I was like, I kept on asking myself that, is this the point where we are supposed to leave Sodom and Gomorrah, and then sulfur starts raining down from heaven and it burns people? But then it's that serious, just as Joseph was telling you, just as Harold was telling you. Many times we take for granted and we're like, this one is just making noise. This one just, wants to be hard, what. And then at the end of the day, when we fall into, this same issue, or people that we are supposed to have looked after gets into these problems, and yet we had the mandate to help out. So it's really important that we look at that. So safeguarding then refers to protecting children, young people, and also vulnerable adults from harm. We have looked at what then predisposes us to being vulnerable. And in the context of public speaking competitions, since we are public speaking adjudicators in training, this includes things like protecting the children under our care from physical abuse, like we saw earlier on, emotional abuse, just like we saw earlier on, sexual abuse that we saw earlier on, neglect, and then exploitation. One problem that we have is that we do not understand these aspects very well. So it is very hard for us then to identify when these types of abuse is happening. Many times we are only very keen to note when probably sexual abuse is happening. We neglect the exploitation that may happen. We neglect the physical abuse that may happen. Even adjudicators are actually exploited uh, in the circuit. And just like I said, it can be within your circle as adjudicators, it can be with the higher powers, or it can be even by there are some adjudicators that are exploited by even the students they are judging. Sometimes I also don't know how that happens, but then, well, it does happen, and we need to acknowledge the fact that yes, it does happen. And we know what measures do we then have on board to ensure that If it has already happened, what do we do? If it has not yet happened, are we able to identify it and then put an end to it? But if it has also already happened, do we have things like mitigation measures? And then we can get back to the drawing board and put, measures preparedness. One thing that I studied in my undergraduate was something called disaster preparedness. I never liked that subject, but coming out of that, I now, you get to understand that, well, even in our day-to-day lives, we need to plan ahead when such things happen. So as an adjudicator, you have a responsibility to contribute to a safe environment for all the children, all the contestants, and even the participants. Before I continue, am I still being heard, or I'm talking to myself, and are we understanding? Please, just the reactions. I'm only seeing one person, yet we have 46 people on the call. Am I speaking to myself? Okay. So it is very important for us to understand our roles as adjudicators. And some of the roles that we have is that we need to be aware of safeguarding policies and procedures that are set by the competition organizer. And now this is something that I want to put across to each and every one of us. Before you get engaged in a competition or adjudicating gig, in as much as we really want maybe the output of that gig, we need to be able to ask of the organizers, we need to ask from them terms of references. And also, we need to be able to engage them in conversations concerning their safeguarding policies or the procedures that they have. Because in an event that such an incident happens, you need to know who to report to or where to go to when such a thing happens, even as an adjudicator, really. So it's important for us not just to go for gigs because, well, we want maybe the output, uh, and then also maybe we want. Uh, it's very important that most times we go for gigs. I don't know how much percentage we go for gigs because, well, we want to empower those other ones that are also there and they become better people. Also, we go for them to learn, in as much as we also go for them for the money. But then before we then go into such spaces, it's important for us to be aware of those policies and the procedures that are set by the competition organizers. And just as an example, as Debate Institute Africa, we have safeguarding policies and procedures that all the people that are doing our events, they must go through, and they must sign commitment forms. I don't know about other competitions, whether they have the same. So it is even you as an individual, if you in the nearby future you want to organize an event, please take into consideration setting up safeguarding policies and procedures. Also, your role is to be able to recognize signs and symptoms of potential abuse, just like we covered earlier on. Sorry, that was a mismatch. And then also the other role that we have is that we need to be able to report the concerns to the appropriate person within the organization that we are working with. But you cannot be able to report if you do not know where to report to or who to report to. And that takes us back to the first aspect that we were talking about, that being aware of safeguarding policies and the procedures that are being set. If they are not set in place, ask your bosses for what then do you do in such a situation. They may tell you that, okay, in case you have an issue, you can come to me. You then have a starting point to when an issue happens. And then also one of the roles that we have as adjudicators is that you need to be able to maintain confidentiality of any disclosures that are made by the participants or the contestants within the public speaking space or even the debating circuit that we are in. If you're not be able to keep your mouth shut or being confidential with what uh, another person has said to you, then you're doing them more harm because, well, you're going to start spreading these, people will start looking at this person in a different way, gossiping about it, name calling, and then you're also contributing to the abuse in one way or the other, yet someone innocently trusted us with such information. So it's important for us to understand the aspects of confidentiality very well of any disclosures that have been made to us by the people that we have been talking to. Uh, then, are we together? Do we have any questions up to that point? Okay, I've seen a few thumbs up, meaning that we are still flowing. The other aspect when we have understood our roles is that we need to know what procedures do we follow when we are reporting the concerns that we have. For example, we need to understand who to report to if we have any concerns about a participant's safety or a contestant's safety. When we are adjudicators in either public speaking or debating, we need to be able to report it immediately to the organizer of that event or the designated safeguarding officer for that institution or that organization. That still takes us to what we talked about in our roles. We need to be able to understand who or to report to all the safeguarding policies and procedures that are there. And then also, what then do we report? We may need to understand that, well, when something has happened, you will put it in writing so that it goes down in record that you actually reported. And just like our lawyer friend Harold will tell you that sometimes when you just say, but I told so and so, they might take it as hearsay and you don't have evidence that something has actually happened. So in such a situation, what then saves you is whether you have probably a written proof or something that can back you up in such a scenario. So this is just an example. You can include details of what you've observed or what the concern is. For example, what is that person's name, if you know it, or and then the behavior that has caused you to be very concerned, or the behavior that has been reported to you. Also, the date and time that the incident has happened is very important because we don't want you to tell us something that happened in 2020 and you're saying that it happened in an event that you were adjudicating on the 7th of probably September 2023, and yet what you're talking about happened in 2020. So it's important for us to know the date and the time of the incident, and also any other information that you think is relevant. Be able to explicitly explain what you've observed, the time that it has happened, the name of the victims, and then probably the person who is causing the harm, and also include other things that may be able to you've observed, but be careful not to add anything to what someone has reported to you, and also do not subtract anything from what they have told you. I'm pretty sure we are all uh, English English speakers by default because, well, they were our very good colonial masters. My very good friends, the Pan-Africanists, will beat me after this, but then yes, they were our colonial masters, and we can always paraphrase these things without removing and without adding what was not there. Then also it's important for us to take into account the aspect of confidentiality uh, of any disclosures that have been made by an adjudicator, a child within our space. Uh, but then we need to be able to report our concerns explicitly. Uh, so before we go to any questions, I think someone has raised their hand. Yes, Odonkara.
Yes, thank you very much. My concern is still on the same issue of reporting. And my question is that since we are always under the chief adjudicators, uh, is it not important for us before we go straight away to the organizers to first report it to the chief adjudicator?
Well, I believe that it's very important for us to understand who then is the person we are supposed to report to. If you find in an organization that they are organized, sorry, in an event that the people organizing are actually very clear with their communication, they will tell you what would report to when such an incident occurs. That reporting to the chief adjudicator may not be an issue, but then it raises issues like concerns like uh, breach of confidentiality and other things really that would then affect the information. Just like I said earlier on, there are very many times that someone may not be comfortable with sharing something to very many people. But if they have trusted you to share the issue that you're having at hand, you can then report it to the safeguarding person if they are there. But if they are not there and you feel that you want to report to the chief adjudicator, well and good. But it's also important for the chief adjudicator to know the issues of confidentiality. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay, thank you so much. Uh, I before we go to the questions that we may have, it's very important for us to understand that safeguarding and the child protection normally is built on the basis of things like good practice. Joseph made mention of that, good practice and then poor practice. So it's important for us to understand and know what good practice looks like and what the poor practices look like for us to be able to work within our means of ensuring that what we are doing is good and we are avoiding those poor practices that can lead us to being suspected to be biased, being suspected to be having uh, relations with probably the teachers, sorry, with, yes, with the teachers, with the adjudicators, with the minors that are in our care. And this is something that I'm going to share with us from the policy. So we need to understand what good practice is. And good practice is not only to help the child or the minor that is in our care, but it is also for our benefits as adjudicators. So we should be able to do things like working in an open environment as we avoid private or unobserved situations and also encourage open communication with no secrets. Working in an open environment may involve working in a, if you're giving feedback to a particular student, you may want to do it in a space where, well, others are there, but then still you're having this conversation with this particular student, or the feedback is being given to this particular student. And any other work that you may be doing, really, to be in an environment that does not raise suspicion. Also, it's also important to know that people may be able to misinterpret our actions. Uh, no matter how well we intend, you may just be really giving feedback to, uh, I may be giving feedback, let me use myself so that I can hurt myself. So I may, as gracious, I may be giving feedback to a male student, and I honestly, in my heart of heart, I just want to have a discussion with the students to build on their public speaking skills. But you find that I have chosen a place where probably it's only the two of us. Uh, Maybe the lighting is very poor in such a place. and a lot of things really that raise suspicion. Yes. So in as much as my intentions were very clear and pure, someone will always, misinterpret it, even when you've taken into concern all the measures that are there. Also, it's very important that we set an example that we wish other people to follow. Treating also young people equally and avoiding favoritism. For example, you're there and then you're like, yay, maybe I have a student that is called, I've forgotten people's names. I have a student that is called Faith, and I'm like, yay, hi Faith, how are you? And you're literally showing everyone that you're so much in favor of Faith, and that then may make you look like a biased kind of person. In as much as Faith is a very good speaker, I hope she is. In as much as Faith is a very good speaker, you then make it make people start questioning: is she really doing this out of her experience, or and excellent uh, level of speech that she has, or it's because she has someone among the judges that is favoring her? Also, it's also very important that we avoid unnecessary physical contact with young people, and it might be any form of physical contact, really. And you might want to just help or support this kid, but then, just like I said, it's important that uh, we may be misunderstood at the end of the day. Also, we can be able to probably work in pairs with appropriate gender of staff that you're with, that can be adjudicators that you're there when you're supervising students, especially if they're of the other gender, the opposite gender, sorry, the opposite gender. And also, we are able to give constructive feedback rather than negative criticism. We also be able to keep a written record of any injury that occurs, along with details of the treatment given. That is probably if you're in a situation and something happens. Also, it's important to recognize if a student is probably developing a crush on you, and as a judge, you can rest assured that all your actions should be things that will not raise concerns at the end of the day. Because, well, in as much as a student is having a crush on you and you've noticed it, the moment you've noticed it, I think it's also important to note that other people are able to notice it. So your actions then going forward is very important, that you do it in such a way that does not raise questions. For example, you may want to avoid encouraging such emotions to be built. You can be sure not to flirt with the student in as much as they are flirting, and in an event that it is too much, please be able to report it to the relevant authorities. For example, as Gracious, and I'm doing something and I recognize that probably I am trying to avoid using other people as examples. So as Gracious, I realize that a student is probably flirting with me so much and it's making me uncomfortable. I would want to report it to whoever is in charge. I will actually look for that person. So like I'm looking for a needle to report, because at the end of the day, one, they need to be helped, as well as I need to be able to protect myself, protect my name, protect my reputation at the end of the day. Now, just as we have looked at things concerning good practice, well, good practice looks at things that your common sense will tell you that this is good. Hmm? However, my uh, geography teacher in high school used to tell me that, used to tell us, sorry, in class, that some of you've left your common sense in your rooms as you were coming in for the class. So I hope that does not happen uh, in such a scenario, especially when we're dealing with young people, because it's very important that we carry along us common sense wherever we are going. That's if you remove it before we go to sleep, because I think that's also possible. So it's important that we move along with common sense everywhere. And when we talk about common sense, it's something that is commonly known. Sorry for that. Commonly known to be good, apart from what in our generation we are now calling good, and yet they are not good, but something that is commonly known as good. For example, you wouldn't want to spend a lot of time with a child in a dark corner and then you're calling that as good. No, we need to be able to differentiate between what is good and then what is bad. So we then have things like poor practice. Maybe this will then be able to make us draw a line between the two. It's always not easy for us to distinguish poor practice from abuse. However, it is our responsibility to make judgments about. It's not the responsibility. It's not our responsibility to make judgment of whether or not abuse is taking place, but it is our responsibility to identify poor practice and possible abuse, just like we have talked about how to identify it, and then act if the concerns are about probably the welfare of a child and welfare of someone that is within our circle. So poor practice looks at things like not spending time alone with young people away from others, also betraying a situation of trust. You may permit abusive peer activities, for example, initiation into ceremonies or cults or initiation ceremonies. Also, you don't want to share changing rooms, toilets, or bedrooms with children. And in case you want to do something there, you may want to knock or warn the people that are there, the children, that you're going there. So that one, you at least you've asked for consent as you're going there, so that if they were not decent, they can then become decent. And also, you don't want to do things like taking a young person in a car on journeys, in as much as it may be short. Also, engaging in rough physical or sexually provocative games or contact, including horseplay. You also don't want to engage in inappropriate language with young people. This can be in writing, it can be phoning, email, or internet. I understand that this generation thinks that using cursing is a very uh, lit or a very good thing, but then it is very important that we understand that when we are in such an environment, we refrain from cursing. We also encourage use of appropriate language, even if they have embraced it. We encourage use of appropriate language. Also, we don't want to hit. You don't want to hit someone. You don't want to push them. You don't want to kick a kid or act in a way that is aggressive, be it physically or even verbally towards a child, even if you're just joking. You also don't want to share a room, especially if it's an accommodative event. You don't want to share a room with a child. You also don't want to allow or engage in any form of inappropriate touching or allow the children to use inappropriate language unchallenged. We also don't expect that as adjudicators, you're making sexually suggestive comments or threats to a child, even if it's banter. As adjudicators, as debaters, public speakers, I think we like banter so much that we fail to draw a line between banter and then things that would then become poor practice. Also, we should refrain from reducing a child to tears as a form of probably control, and also fail to act upon and record any allegations made by a child. It's also important that we do not invite or allow children to spend time with us alone and unsupervised. I think basically those are the things that I wanted to share with us. It's important that we understand what good practice is, and then also what poor practice looks like. In as much as we may not be able to differentiate so much between poor practice and abuse, but it's also good that we note that it's our responsibility to know when we are doing poor practice, and also to be able to identify when abuse is happening. Well, thank you so much. Do we have any questions? I will be able to respond to them. Okay, I'll take the silence as we do not have any questions. Uh, I hope we have learned something, and we are going to be very good safeguarding persons, especially even in our adjudication roles. Have we learned something? Or I was speaking to myself? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much. Seeing the spaces. Angel Wilson is saying that they have learned a lot. Personally, Churchill has also said he has learned a lot. Hood has also said they have learned a lot. Well, thank you so much for being very good students, and have a blessed night. Thank you. Harold, back over to you.
Okay, we thank you so much,
Someone is
Gracious.
asking a question.
Okay, surely. Let me read the question for you out of courtesy
Thank you.
because CAP loves you. Okay, Ewach, what if the hey, this English is disturbing me somehow. Let me just get to it. Ewach, what if it's one of the organizers? Hey, what if it's one of the organizers involved in any kind of abuse? Do we have any other person to reach out to?
Well, I personally think that in any debate organization, we don't only have one person that is part of the organizing team. We always have a variety. And I think in debate space, we always have someone called the equity officer. In as much as I normally see that we normally only do clashes, but then, well, in an event that it is I am not saying that organizers do not uh, abuse. They do, because we have I've seen the examples of such things happening. Personally, it has happened to me, uh, and I think that was way long time ago before I became an adult. So. Uh, in such a situation where it is an organizer, one of the organizers that is doing involving in the act of abuse, if it is not the safeguarding person who is involving in such an activity, please report to the safeguarding person. If the safeguarding person is the one involved, look for his or her boss and report to such a person. But if you think that his or her boss will not help out, look for someone else within the organizing committee and report to. At least in one way or the other, you will be able to get help in one of those, if it's one of the people that are organizing. For example, I'm just giving an example. For example, in Debate Institute Africa, all the staff know that if there is an issue concerning safeguarding and welfare, they'll report to the designated person, the designated person in charge of welfare and safeguarding. If that person, if she is not available, they then need to report to the team leader of the institution. Even if it is among the staff, really, you then report, you can report in that way. I don't know if that answers your question. It was Peter. I don't know if that answers your question, Peter.
Okay, so I'll just
Okay.
have to look at more questions. All right, so Anthony is asking, my question is, What support systems are available for adjudicators who may be affected by safeguarding issues they encounter?
I believe that some of the support systems that we can have is one, being able to know or having a person that you can report to. Because when you report to, I don't know if I get your question very well, especially in the aspects of support systems. However, one of the systems that I think we need to have, or we always have, is that you need to know who you're reporting to, and also know that you report immediately such an event happens. One thing that I forgot to tell you is that many times issues may happen when we are doing the adjudication issues and we do not report immediately. Now, if we do not report immediately, this problem can escalate uh, in such a situation, and it's never a beautiful thing to look at when it has escalated, because we would have saved the situation by reporting promptly up to that point. I don't know, Anthony, if that answers your question. Yes, as adjudicators, we may face challenges, but then when you face a challenge concerning safeguarding, you know who to report to, and then you also do the reporting. And the person you're reporting to, I'm pretty sure they would have been trained on how then to handle the situation that has happened. Anthony, are we together up to that point, or you need more clarity? Oh, okay, Anthony has said yes.
Okay, since Anthony has said yes, we could look at what Xavier was saying. Amolu Xavier. Amolu Xavier says, can you get the notes of the presentation such that we can be able to review? Then I'll leave that to you, Precious. Then Susan is asking, what if a participant is facing serious abuse, but they don't want you to tell anyone else about it, yet you also can't offer them the help that they need? What do you do?
Susan, I encourage you not to kill yourself, especially if uh, you don't know what to do and the child does not want you to tell anyone else. Because when you keep it to yourself, yet you're not providing a solution, you are one affecting the child further, because by the time they have told you, they are expecting you to find a solution for them. And then secondly, you're also affecting your own self uh, in the long run. So when we were going through the issues of reporting, I remember that I told us that one, we can do reporting of what has happened to, for example, I am an adjudicator, and I know Harold is the probably the safeguarding person in that tournament, and a child, maybe one of the speakers I'm taking, for example, Desmond has told me that he's facing an issue and he does not want me to tell anyone else. I can still report the issue to Harold without necessarily mentioning the name of the child, but also I can be able to tell Harold, who is the safeguarding person, because he is trained to know the aspect of confidentiality. And to a point where, as gracious, I cannot offer Desmond a solution, I then need to refer to someone else who will give this child a solution. And also, as gracious, I would then advise Desmond, have a conversation with him and be open to him and tell him that, Desmond, uh, this problem that you brought to me, I seem to not have the best solution for you. But then we can always, can we try this option? That is also another thing that we can do. But then also, it's important that we know that keeping these things to ourselves, or keeping issues concerning safeguarding or abuse to ourselves, and yet we cannot provide solution in one way or the other, is detrimental to ourselves. Because in an event that this child, probably let's say it is a sexual abuse, this child is sexually abused, they come and report to you or me, and then I don't have a solution, they get pregnant, or something else happens to them and it gets out, you see then the problem, there are very many problems that come up with it. And as adults in such a situation, if we cannot provide a solution, we can always seek counsel from someone else that we believe can give the solution, which in this case I am still echoing that it should be someone who has been put in place to probably carry on that task, or one of the event organizers. I don't know if that answers your question, Susan. Susan? Okay, thank you so much. Harold, do you still want to read Anthony's question? Or CAP has lost?
Okay. Yeah, CAP was about to lose their love. Anthony Muduku says that maybe a last question that I have is, in what circumstances is it necessary to share the confidential information and with whom?
I believe that to a point where the information that we have been told is going to affect someone else, we then share the confidential information. But also, I'm still going to answer this question, assuming that in these events, because I'm really looking forward to a time when we have spaces where it is clearly designed or stipulated to us who is in charge of safeguarding, or who then we can go to in case we have issues, maybe equity issues and all that. Then I'm pretty sure it would be a very great environment. So I also think that just like I said earlier on, it is very dangerous for you as a judge to keep a case of abuse to yourself and not report it to someone who has been in that organization of that event. Well, uh, imagine that this issue then surfaces later on, and then the people that have organized the event, they're saying that, well, I do not know, we do not know, that has never reached out to us. But the child will say that, look, I shared this with so and so, I shared it with Gracious, and probably Gracious did not share it with the relevant persons, and we did not get any solution to the problem that was there. So I think uh, under such circumstances, when we are adjudicators, we can then share this information to the safeguarding person, or the person that is in charge of safeguarding, but also we can as well share to probably anyone else that is part of the organizing committee, so that they are able to be in the know, and they can also be able to act in a confidential manner. I don't know if that answers your question, Anthony. Hey. Yes,
Okay,
thank
I
you so
believe
much.
that answers.
Yes. Harold, back to you.
Okay, I believe that answers the question. All right, so I believe we're about to come to the end of our particular session. But just one of the key takeaways that maybe I would want to also re-emphasize, apart from you trying so much to protect yourself from abuse and to protect others from abuse too, one mostly undermined thing that happens with very many young adjudicators or starter adjudicators, those in advance can tell you, is that most of the time some organizations are looking forward to exploiting you. And I'm saying this out of no malice to any organization, but some organizations, they will want to exploit you, especially the young female adjudicators. And there was an instance, I cannot say the names, they are withheld, where one of the tournament conveners sent to one of the female adjudicators a text saying that I have booked you for nationals. Just a simple text like that. I have booked you for nationals. And this seems to be quite simple. But what happens is that, especially if someone is in a compromised situation where they are working, they want the experience, at the same time they want the money, and then a whole convener of a tournament tells them such a statement, most of the times they'll go through abuse and no one else will ever know. So what this does at the end of the day is that it helps you come back to your moral values, and you ask yourself as a person, what is my moral compass and what then guides me? My advice to every single young adjudicator here, especially the females, is that you should never give in to any sort of sexual exploits in any way. It never makes up your art and never is a value of who you truly are. Feel free to turn down doing such tournaments. There are always more tournaments and more avenues or safe spaces within which you can be able to exhibit your skill without having any fear to being able to compromise your own body for a morsel of bread. The other thing that you want to watch out for, and this is to all the adjudicators, whether male or female, is that still some organizations or conveners would want to exploit you. Never start working without having proper terms of reference. Terms of reference, you had Gracious talking about that, but I can just better explain it well. You know, every single time you go to work for a tournament, you must have a sort of contract between you and the tournament organizers or conveners. And that contract specifies the nature of your work, what is the deep extent of your work, what do you do, and what are your roles. And that same contract has terms and conditions of breach. So if you breach any of the roles, you are liable and you will not be given full enumeration to the extent of your breach. So you need to have terms of reference. It is the only thing that can ever prove that you were contracted by these guys, and it's the only document you can use to ask for your money if they're not given to you. Now, when you go do a tournament on a gentleman's agreement, you are working at your own risk. They will always denounce you and disown you if at all they are unfaithful. So terms of reference are more like an open contract that you have with that tournament. And on this call, we have adjudicators that have worked with Paragon, Rhetorica, Central Region, and regionals. One of them is Hashim Wangusa, there is Eva Spashagire and Onyed Churchill. They can be, and Kangwam Finian, and I think any other that I may have forgotten. They can be able to testify to you that none of them began their work without having terms of reference sent to them. Normally, the policy is at Debate Institute Africa that before you start to work or do any work, terms of reference are sent to you on your email. You print them out, you sign on them, and then send an image or a scanned document of the signed on terms of reference. That is you having a deal with Debate Institute Africa. And that is you having a deal with Debate Institute Africa, and you hold them liable to the extent of the terms of reference or the terms of reference specified. Now you will notice that as you keep on growing in your art, different adjudicators on different levels can have different terms of reference. For example, the chief adjudication panel, the CAP, where the chief adjudicator is, the deputy chief adjudicator is, they normally have different terms from the rest of the adjudicators in terms of roles and remuneration, whereas the adjudicators too can have their own terms. So for as long as you have those terms of reference, you are able to prove that at that point in time, you were a hired, you're not an employee as per se, because it's not a contract of employment, but rather you are a contractor. You are, I don't know, I think, Bridget, are you able to unmute and tell me what that is called in law, whereby someone is not a permanent contract of employment, but a one-time contractor? I don't know if Bridget is on the call. You could help me unmute and just simply tell me what it is. I've kind of forgotten. Okay, I think Bridget is not on the call. But, okay, Bridget, can you hear me? If you can hear me, kindly help me with that particular term to really come helpful. Oh, yeah. Joseph calls it consultant. Yeah, it has different kinds of names. Yeah, you're not actually an employee, but maybe you are a one-time. Bridget, can you hear me? Naloga, Bridget, if you can hear me, I need you to help me with a term that we use in employment law for a person who's not an employee, but they are contracted on a one-term basis, and they're given a contract for that particular line of work. So I don't know if Naloga Bridget can hear me. She's one of the Bridget. If you can hear me, kindly unmute. Okay, maybe you can write it down for me in the chat space, Bridget, if you don't mind. Yeah, but we can take it as consultant, like Joseph calls it right now, as we wait for Bridget maybe to get it for me. Yeah, you are either a consultant or you can even be a one-time contractor, and you're just contracted for that one time to do your work. So it's not like you are employed by Debate Institute Africa, but you are just a one-time contractor or a consultant for that particular duty or job. And yeah, someone is calling it freelancing, Hood Kushaba. It has different names. So that's what you guys are as adjudicators. You're not employees. So you don't go to court saying, I was employed, have a contract of employment. No, it's not a contract of employment. You are either consultant, you are either freelancer, or a private contractor. So you only do work for that particular period of time and specify in that particular way. So to be able to safeguard yourself again from exploitation. Yeah, Bridget calls it contract for service. Yes, that's how they call it. It's called a contract for service, for offering of services. It's not an employment contract. Yeah. So you can either be a consultant, you can be a freelancer, and you have a contract for service with the organization. So this is very important in you knowing the kind of legal implications it has. Now, even though it is not an employment contract, but the person who also contracts you and gives the contract for service, which are the terms of reference in this context, can also hold you legally liable if you breach any of the tournament rules and regulations. And Gracious has been able to spend close to 2 hours telling you about the different modus operandi of Debate Institute Africa. And every single thing you have seen here is what you need to live up to. So in case you are quite forgetful, you can watch this video, but still one guiding principle you have is that please be professional when dealing with children. Do not borrow money from them. Do not exploit them. Do not have any extraneous conversations with them that go beyond what you have to do. Do not take them to any secret places. Do not unnecessarily touch them. You don't need to touch them to give them feedback. Be as cautious as you can. And please, even if it's not only Paragon Rhetorica, always have your terms of reference before you begin to work. Do not work for free. Do not allow to be exploited. So Gracious, I believe, will be able to share these particular slides. These slides are going to be examinable too. We need to be sure that as you come to have the contract for service or become a consultant or freelancer for the upcoming upcoming public speech track that is going to go in different regions within Uganda and finally at nationals, that we are well versed with adjudicators who know what they are doing. So already we are quite many on a program, but we don't need as many people as is on a program to be able to run a tournament. So we want to sieve out quality of adjudicators, and understanding of such particular aspects is quite very vital. Now, in case anyone has any questions, I just want to put out one more clarity, is that this is for your own good, like Joseph Gracious Luka was able to say at the start. This is to help you safeguard yourself, to protect yourself from claims that may come against you. We that do law, there are very many things that can happen. You can have defamation suits against you. You can have slander suits against you. You can have sexual exploitation against you. You can have indecent assault against you. The sort of lawsuits that can be pulled on you are quite numerous. And if any of us has been able to interact with various international schools, you will find out that some of the international schools are quite very strict with how visitors behave around students. And some international schools do not even allow you to have any sort of physical interaction with their particular students and any sort of taking of photos with them. So you need to be able to understand what tournament am I going to work for and what are their rules and regulations. And you want to work for a tournament that has safeguarding policies. This is important for everyone. This is important for you as a male adjudicator. You don't want to become the next, I've forgotten what this celebrity guy's name is, Johnny Depp. You don't want to become the next Johnny Depp and get accused of something. I mean, it can happen to anyone. You can be accused of rape or indecent assault and you have no way of protecting yourself. That is why this particular training is important. And for females, most especially, the space is ravaged by sexual predators. It's quite an unfortunate circumstance that some of the partners and organizers are like that. And it is quite evident if you see a tournament not having safeguarding policies, then you would know that you are in for deep trouble. So you must learn or to be able to protect and safeguard yourself as an adjudicator. So from us to you, unless there are any further questions or any further clarities, we would like to end this particular training session or this particular facilitation, or call it a workshop for the night. And we would like to remind all of you to please and please always go for tournaments that give you, one, a safeguarding policy that can guarantee your protection as judges, but then again, secondly, tournaments that will give you terms of reference. And I will repeat this on terms of reference, and still not to attack any other tournament, but there are a number of tournaments that have been able to have judges go to the tournament for like 1, 2, or 3 days, and no one has clear terms of reference. So everyone is given a different amount of money or remuneration based on who you are. Some people, if you are very, very aggressive, like my very good brother here called Wangusa Hashim Otahunga, they will give you a bigger amount of money. Whereas if you are a little bit calm and down to earth, like my very good brother Churchill, Onyet Churchill, you will be given 20K after a 4-day tournament. So you want to be really sure that you don't get 20K in the worst of situations. Please and please, you don't get 20,000. So please, yeah, it's quite ironic. Yeah, it's quite ironic. And I'm not trying to mention any other tournament, but I'm telling you the reality of the space that you're going to work in. So you want to be sure about that. And please have professional conversations with the conveners and the chief adjudicators. Let them not also take advantage of you. It's not good for other people to be receiving up to 100,000 remuneration, and you're getting 20K and a thank you, and they're telling you you're a very hardworking young man. There is potential ahead of you. I love your resilience and your patience. You'll die of hunger on the way home. You will not have a Rolex to eat. Nonetheless, guys, from us to you at Debate Institute Africa, Paragon Rhetorical National Public Speech Competition, and the online course training, wish you a good night. Please take good care of yourselves, and please familiarize yourselves with the safeguarding rules and policies. They are very important for you. So before we leave, tomorrow we have one last session. Today had to be the very last session, but Miriam Rioba had the network disconnection and she was not able to finish most of her session. She was only in for 40 minutes. So what is happening is that tomorrow we're going to have her once again. Please and please, you don't want to miss her session. Her session is going to be rich. You're going to learn how to give feedback to students. You're going to learn how to give feedback to fellow judges, how to prepare for tournaments, and most importantly, how you can become a coach to coach other public speakers, because as a judge, you will be expected to be a coach one day. So you want to learn how to pass on the art of rhetoric to other speakers. So from us to you guys, have a good night. We really do hope that the Arsenal fans were able to recover. The Man U fans have already recovered. Those are the most stone cold people on earth. You cannot have 14 losses in a season and you're still alive. Man, you must be hard. So we hope they were ready to recover and everyone else is okay. So guys, have a good night.